All right, let's think about this. In Dungeons and Dragons, we talk a lot about spells, combat, big epic quests. But what about that quiet bond? The one between a spellcaster and their familiar. Is it just utility? A flying scout, something
Yeah.
sneaky? Or is there something, well, deeper going on?
Oh, that question really hits home. I
Yeah.
actually had this moment in a game recently. One player, a gnome illusionist, picked this really unusual familiar. It was like a tiny mosaic beetle made of shifting colored glass pieces, communicated only with light patterns.
A mosaic beetle. Okay, that's definitely not your standard owl.
Right. And honestly, at first I just thought, okay, cool aesthetic. But then it just clicked into place during this really tense moment. They were in this hallway, magical traps everywhere, classic stuff.
Huh.
And the beetle on the gnome's shoulder starts flashing like crazy red and black patterns. The player, totally in sync with it, just yells out a warning about an energy surge, like a split second before it happens.
Wow. So it wasn't a perception check or anything.
No, nothing mechanical like that. It was purely this unique, established connection. It added this layer of, I don't know, engagement and real tension that I totally hadn't planned on. It was brilliant.
That is exactly the kind of thing we want to get into today. For anyone maybe new to D&D listening, familiars are basically these magical companions. Spellcasters get them, off you with the Find Familiar spell.
Mhm.
And yeah, usually people think practical. What can it do for me?
And that utility focus, it definitely leads to the usual suspects. Owls are great scouts because, well, they have amazing night vision. Cats are super stealthy, they make sense mechanically, they're efficient. Almost expected sometimes.
But we were looking at this really interesting piece over on LitRPG Reads, Beyond Owls and Cats, Unique Familiars to Deepen Your D&D Character's Lore. And it got us thinking. Familiars can be so much more. They can be these amazing tools for story, for role-playing, for making the whole game experience richer, more memorable.
Exactly. The article makes a really strong case that stepping outside those common choices unlocks this huge potential for narrative depth. So today, we're going to explore why that choice matters so much, how you can maybe bend or adapt the existing mechanics creatively, and crucially, how to weave these unique companions right into the fabric of your campaign story.
Okay, so let's start there. Why does choosing, say, a clockwork spider over a regular spider actually matter beyond just looking cool? What's the deeper significance?
Well, the article points out something really insightful. A familiar often acts like a mirror or sometimes even a deliberate contrast to the spellcaster's own personality, their background, their whole magical philosophy, really.
Like a kind of shorthand for who the character is.
Sort of, yeah. Or at least a clue. Think
Yeah.
about it. A character who's very grounded, maybe draws magic from the earth. Perhaps they bond with something sturdy like a badger. It suggests that steadiness, that resilience in the caster themselves.
Okay, I see that.
Or flip it around. Maybe you have a wild magic sorcerer, all chaotic energy. Their familiar might be something like a firefly spirit, hinting at those unpredictable flashes of insight, that sort of ephemeral nature of their power.
That's a really neat way to think about it, the familiar as like passive character development. And the article mentioned the arrival of the familiar too, right? That it can be its own story beat.
Oh, definitely. The way that bond forms is pure role-playing gold. Did your character have to, earn its trust? Maybe put them some complex, ancient ritual.
Or maybe it was just a magical accident, like the article suggested. A spell gone wrong and suddenly you're stuck with this weird little creature.
Exactly. And that whole process, building trust, maybe making pacts or promises, figuring out how to even communicate, or maybe dealing with a familiar that's just hilariously incompatible, that's all fantastic role-playing fuel.
I love that idea of incompatibility. The article had some great examples, didn't it?
Yeah.
Like a bard whose lute is alive and sarcastic.
Yeah. Imagine the banter. Or the druid, whose best friend is this little sentient seedling literally growing alongside them through the campaign. It adds so much character.
And that brings up the emotional side. These aren't just stat blocks. They can really pull at the heartstrings, can't they?
Absolutely. The article talks about how they can generate real empathy from the whole party. They can be comic relief when things get grim. But also, if that familiar is threatened or hurt, that creates instant pathos, huge emotional stakes.
Like the example of the warlock's imp struggling with its nature, that adds a whole layer of complexity.
For sure. And it's not static. A good familiar, the article argues, reacts to the journey. It supports the caster, maybe sometimes challenges them, reflects what they're going through. It grows with them.
Okay, so the why is clear. It adds depth, story, emotion. Let's talk about the how. The mechanics we know, find familiar, maybe the Pact of the Chain for warlocks. How do we get from that to, say, a living origami crane?
Well, the article starts by acknowledging those standard ways, the baseline rules. But the key insight is not being rigidly bound by the specific creature list in the spell description.
So bending the rules. Homebrew.
Not necessarily breaking them, more like creatively interpreting them. The article uses the term reskinning, which is perfect. You take an existing stat block, say a bat, but you describe it completely differently.
Like your clockwork mock example earlier.
Exactly. It flies, it uses the bat's senses, maybe it's stealth, mechanically it is a bat, but visually, thematically, it's this intricate wind-up creation, or maybe you use owl stats, but describe it as a butterfly made of moonlight. You keep the game balanced because the mechanics are untouched, but you gain massive amounts of flavor.
That's brilliant. All the creativity, none of the balance settings.
Yeah.
What about going slightly beyond reskinning? The article mentions scaling.
Yeah, this is about small, flavorful enhancements over time, not turning your familiar into a combat monster. Maybe as the bond deepens, the familiar develops a minor new sense, like that water creature, sensing magical currents.
Or maybe it picks up a tiny cantrip that fits its theme, like a little flame familiar making harmless sparks.
Precisely. The article even floats the idea of homebrewed feats for the familiar, maybe tied to big story moments. Like, it does something incredibly brave, and now it gains a small, unique, non-combat ability as a reward.
A narrative reward, essentially.
Mhm.
Something that feels earned and special, but doesn't suddenly make it a powerhouse in fights.
That's the core principle the article stresses. Keep the familiar as a creative assistant, a story catalyst, not a primary damage dealer. Any mechanical evolution should really serve the narrative first and foremost.
And doing that kind of thing definitely needs buy-in from the DM, right? Collaboration is key.
Absolutely critical. Player and DM need to be on the same page. The goal is enhancing the story for everyone, not just giving one player an unfair advantage. So focus on abilities that drive plot. Maybe it whispers a clue, or it's immune to some specific plot-related effect. Things that move the story forward in interesting ways.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So if we're moving beyond owls and cats, and we understand reskinning and maybe minor scaling, where do we get the ideas for these unique familiars? The article had some pointers there too.
Yeah, it really emphasizes thematic resonance. The familiar should somehow connect to your character's look, their backstory, their goals. Utility is fine, but does it resonate with the character's story? That's the key question the article poses. It's almost like another facet of the character design itself.
So not just picking something cool, but something that means something for that specific character.
Exactly. The article suggests that the most memorable familiars often have a really striking appearance, sure, but also inherent role-playing potential. And sometimes, interestingly, it's the flaws or quirks that make them truly compelling, truly feel alive.
Where should people look for inspiration then?
Anywhere, really. Local legends from your character's homeland, obscure fairy tales, mythology is a huge one. Even just browsing monster manuals with a creative eye. The article really encourages casting a wide net. Think about folkloric animals, magical traditions tied to the character's origins.
That idea of tying it to a homeland or a tradition is great. And the article stress description again, right? Making that owl stat block feel like a firefly spirit.
Massively important. It's all in the description. And don't shy away from intentional flaws, it says. That fragile glass hedgehog, maybe it can't take a hit, but the role-playing involved in protecting it could be amazing.
And culture could play a role, too. Like maybe certain regions only allow certain types of familiars.
For sure.
Yeah.
Maybe only wind spirits are summoned in one area. Maybe an arcane college specializes in creating enchanted object familiars instead of living creatures. Divine casters might have familiars tied to their deities' symbols or domains. The point the article makes isn't about power, it's about finding the most narratively interesting companion. Or maybe even foil for your character.
And the article had that huge list of ideas to get the ball rolling. And what were some of them?
Oh, it was fantastic. Things like a lantern beetle with a glowing abdomen, a tiny clockwork sparrow, a ghostly koi fish that swims through the air, a living candle flame.
Okay, ghostly koi swimming through air. I love that. What else?
Let's see. A clockwork gremlin, maybe a bit mischievous. An animated origami crane. A miniature mimic disguised as, like, the clasp on your spellbook. A firefly spirit that gives off little prophetic flashes. A sentient shadow mouse.
Read your mimic class. That's devious. Keep going.
A sliver of storm cloud shaped like a fox. A singing stone cicada. A floating eyeball in a crystal orb, creepy but cool. A porcelain cat with painted runes. An air jellyfish trailing sparkly bits.
Air jellyfish. Okay, the creativity is just wild.
There was also a glimmering glass hedgehog, like we mentioned. An enchanted rootling covered in moss, a phantom moth that supposedly absorbs nightmares, a flickering paper bat with shifting runes on it,
Phantom nightmare moths. Wow.
a starfish imbued with starlight, a drifting ember butterfly, and a silver-furred dormouse tangled in magic thread. Just tons of evocative concepts to spark ideas.
Absolutely. And in the article mentioned it's okay to even create custom stats sometimes, right?
Yeah.
As long as it's fair and focused on the story.
Yeah, but again, collaboration is key there. Talking it through with your DM, maybe during session 0 or downtime, really nail down its origin, its quirks, any built-in story hooks. The best ones the article suggests come from that blend of player idea and DM world building.
So you've got your unique familiar, maybe a glimmering glass hedgehog. How do you make it more than just a cool description? How does it actually get woven into the campaign's story?
Well, the article argues that the familiar's real magic is often in how it pushes the character to grow, or how it introduces unexpected turns in the plot. One way is to give the familiar its own little goals or desires, maybe some unresolved urge, or a secret dream.
Like that fire elemental wanting to see the ocean.
Exactly. Or maybe an ancient scroll familiar trying to find its missing final chapter. It makes them feel like individuals, not just accessories. And when they have personalities, the article points out, they can become real sidekicks, confidants, sometimes even plot drivers.
How so? How can a familiar drive the plot?
Well, let it surprise you. Maybe it forms a weird bond with an NPC the party distrusts. Or maybe it accidentally reveals some secret it overheard or carries. That could lead to, like, a mini session focused just on the familiar or interesting downtime activities related to its needs.
I like that. And the article talked about familiar evolution too, didn't it, tied to this story?
Yeah, like maybe after a major magical event, that ghostly koi transforms into something more substantial, like a jade spirit. Or the origami crane performs some heroic act and fully awakens as a wind spirit. It's not always about power-ups, maybe just unlocking new role-playing aspects or story paths. It even mentioned the idea of a familiar seeking revenge if its master falls.
Heavy stuff. And just giving them a voice or an agenda or quirks makes a huge difference. Like maybe it gets cryptic notes from the Feywild or recalls memories from a past life.
Totally. And the article had another great list for that, quirks and story hooks. Things like maybe the familiar is being hunted by some Fey knight with a grudge.
Oh, instant plot hook.
Or it only communicates in riddles. Or it used to be the lost pet of a major villain. Or maybe it was even human once, but only has fragmented memories.
Used to be human. That's a campaign arc right there. What else?
Let's see. It's inexplicably drawn to one specific party member. It carrying a forgotten prophecy somewhere on its body. It secretly dreams of becoming a dragon. It sings magical songs, but only during the new moon.
These are fantastic. They add so much mystery.
Or maybe it's part of a secret network of familiars. It needs to eat rare magical essences. It's cursed to forget its master every single morning. It contains volatile, planar energy that causes wild magic surges nearby.
Okay, the wild magic one sounds fun and dangerous.
Right. Or it carries a secret only certain races can perceive. It only talks when it thinks no one else is listening. It desperately wants to return to some lost realm. It holds the key to some ancient puzzle. It always distrusts one specific type of creature or item. Or maybe it's seen a vision of the party's fate.
Wow. Any one of those could spin off into its own adventure.
Yeah.
And the article stressed involving the whole party with the familiar, right?
Yeah, hugely important. DMs should actively create moments for other players to interact with it, bond with it. It shouldn't just be the wizard's pet. It can become the party's mascot, maybe even the emotional core of the group, like the article says.
It makes the magic feel more real, more shared, when everyone gets invested in this little creature.
Which brings us neatly to actually role-playing the familiar. The article makes a great point. Personality is key, even if it can't talk.
How do you show personality without dialogue?
Through physical cues, specific behaviors, how it reacts to things. Does it puff up when annoyed? Does it hide behind its master when scared? Does it always try to groom the barbarian's beard? You have to think about how it communicates non-verbally.
And if it can communicate, thinking about its style, is it chatty, mysterious, formal? Does its tone change?
Exactly. The article suggests looking at famous fictional companions for inspiration. Think Salem from Sabrina, Eirik Bernison from his Dark Materials, Pantalemon from the same series. They're memorable because their personalities are so distinct.
That's a great tip. And how the player treats the familiar says a lot too, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Is it a tool, a cherished pet, an equal partner, a burden? Watching that relationship evolve can be a really compelling part of the character's own journey.
And the familiar's vibe can rub off on the whole party.
Yeah.
That hyperactive lightning squirrel versus the stoic jellyfish example, totally different party dynamic.
For sure. The article had another fun list for role-playing styles, like a grumpy librarian bat, that hyperactive lightning squirrel, a sarcastic candle flame, a regal peacock ghost, a stoic jellyfish,
Sarcastic candle flame. I need to see that.
a silent protector golem bug, an eager but clumsy apprentice owl, a disillusioned pixie who's seen too much, a mournful koi fish, a boastful shadow mouse,
Boastful shadow mouse. Okay, these are great archetypes.
a fussy clockwork sparrow, a shy moth, a secretive rootling, a blustering wind fox, a whimsical origami crane that folds itself into shapes reflecting the mood. Just tons of starting points.
That origami crane one keeps coming up. It's such a cool image. And the article suggested the DM could sometimes step in and roleplay the familiar.
Yeah, for specific moments maybe. To deliver a key insight, create a surprise, inject some unexpected humor or pathos, it keeps things fresh. But the main thing the article repeats is focusing on the joy and the depth it adds, not just the mechanics.
Right. And finally, the article touched on something really interesting. Using familiars for world building. How does that work?
It's the idea that the kinds of familiars available, or the ways they're summoned in a particular place, can actually reveal things about the setting's history, its cultures, its magic system.
Like that region where only wind spirits can be summoned. Or the academy crafting crystal familiars.
Exactly. The familiar's origin becomes a little window into the lore. That glass hedgehog isn't just weird. Maybe it tells you about a lost enclave of glass artisans or alchemists. That clockwork gremlin hints at a hidden city of inventors.
So you can play with exotic familiars tied to specific places or even other planes, and getting one might require its own quest.
Yeah. Maybe you need to travel to a volcanic shrine to summon an ember familiar. Or only certain blessed individuals can call forth a specific celestial type. It turns acquiring the familiar into part of the adventure itself.
The article had that table connecting types to origins and story hooks, right?
Yes, it was super useful. Like, air jellyfish might imply floating islands, the Aetherbound Isles. A burning paper crow could point to rival magic schools, maybe at Ember College. A crystal cicada hints at a dream magic culture in the dreaming forest of glass.
It's such an elegant way to seed lore. What were some others?
Clockwork gremlins could tie into mysteries around a lost, gnomish clock town. Ghostly koi might connect to forgotten river guides in the lunar spirit marshes. A sliver of storm cloud could relate to planar rifts and weather magic at a Skyforge monastery.
Gargoyle lizards from ruined Titan citadels, enchanted rootlings from the Whisperwood druids, a living candle flame from a temple of the second dawn, a shadow mouse from the night market catacombs. Each one suggests a whole story.
Precisely. The article makes the point that every description, every unique familiar choice is an opportunity to hint at these deeper world contexts. They become these subtle threads that make the campaign setting feel unique and lived in, sparking player curiosity.
And you can reward that curiosity. Give players who investigate their familiar's origins, extra lore, maybe allies, or meaningful choices tied to that discovery.
Exactly. It makes the world feel responsive and deep.
So, wrapping this up, it feels really clear that choosing a familiar is, or at least can be, way more profound than just picking a tool for the job in D&D.
Absolutely. These unique companions, when you really lean into them, they can bring so much humor, tension, and just layers of richness to the game that you might not get otherwise.
So for everyone listening, whether you're a DM thinking about your world or a player thinking about your next character, the article really encourages you to embrace the weird, the unexpected, create those companions that break the mold.
Because, as the article puts it so well, sometimes the real emotional heart of your campaign might just end up being that strange little familiar nobody saw coming.
So go for it. Create those legends for your familiars. Celebrate their quirks. Watch them become unforgettable parts of your story. What's the unforgettable familiar you're going to bring to the table next? Huge thanks again to LitRPG Reads and Paul Bello for the inspiration today. He's a fine fellow indeed. And hey, we'd love to hear from you all. Share your own unique familiar stories or memorable moments in the comments.